I am not going to bed until I have preserved all of these cucumbers. I have in front of me 86 cucumbers, and I think about 25 of them are really small ones like this that I've just picked for pickling, because honestly I don't even want them to grow to become this size because I have so many of them already. But let's see how many ways we can come up with to preserve or use these cucumbers. The first thing I'm going to do is make a cucumber limeade so I have something to drink while I'm working on the rest of the cucumbers. So I just have a few cucumbers here. I'm going to peel them and chop them up, put them in a blender, add some water, and puree them. I'm just going to take this now and strain out the pulp. Now I'm going to cut up a lime, and I'm going to put the juice of one lime in here. And I will say that I only ended up using 2 cucumbers. Now if you wanted to, you could add some sweetener to this, or you could even dilute it a little bit with water, but I tasted it and I like it the way that it is, so I'm just going to drink it the way that it is. Okay, 2 cucumbers down, a lot to go. So this is totally cheating, but I'm definitely counting it as a way that I'm going to use it. Is I'm just going to peel one up and slice it as a snack, because I'm sitting here looking at all these cucumbers and it's making me really want to eat one. So I'm just going to eat one fresh, and I'm counting it as a way. So that's going to be 2 ways. And there we go. Now, as I said with these small cucumbers, I'm just going to experiment a little bit. I'm just going to cut the ends off of them and cut them into maybe quarters. Some of them maybe halves if they're smaller. And then I'm going to just salt them and try pickling them. I want the salt to sit on there for a few hours probably. So I'm doing that first, and then it can sit in the salt while I get the larger ones prepared for the freezer. Okay, now I'm just going to coat this in salt to get some of the moisture out so that the pickles will be a little bit crispier, and I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to coat it generously because later I will rinse the salt off. I'm just going to toss them a little bit in it. And some of that water should pool at the bottom of the bowl, and I will strain that out later. I'm just going to let this sit for a few hours while I work on the rest of them. I think we're at number 4, and the 4th way that I'm going to use these cucumbers is by giving the scraps to the animals. I'm giving them the pulp from making the cucumber limeade, and I'm also giving them the ends that I cut off of the cucumbers as well as the peels. I'll also give them any cucumbers that have maybe shriveled a little bit that I picked a few days ago and they've been sitting on the counter, or any that have gotten a little big and might not be the best quality. A 5th way to preserve cucumbers would be to freeze dry them. I've already done that, and I have quite a few Mylar bags full of cucumbers that have already been freeze dried. So I won't be doing any of these cucumbers using that method, but I did want to show you quick that I have one Ziploc bag right here that we're just kind of snacking on right now, full of freeze-dried cucumbers. This was my first batch of freeze-dried cucumbers, and I also did zucchini, so there's some zucchini pieces in here too. But I tried with the peel, like this one, and I tried some of them without the peel, and I salted these pretty heavily before I put them in the freeze dryer. If I were to do it again, I would do quite a bit less salt, but they still turned out pretty good, and they were pretty good for snacking. My preference is the ones without the peel. I just don't like the texture of the peel once it's been freeze-dried to eat as a snack. Maybe reconstituted, it would be fine with the peel, but honestly, I haven't even tried reconstituting these because I've had so many fresh cucumbers. And also my goal with freeze-drying them was to sort of find a snack that would satisfy my craving for something crunchy like a chip and be a little bit healthier. So I think that these were overall a success. The only downside is that I can't freeze dry very many at a time because 1 or 2 cucumbers usually fills an entire tray by the time you set them all next to each other side by side. And my freeze dryer only has 5 trays, and it takes about a day to do that. But it was still a successful experiment, and I'll definitely do it again. My freeze dryer is running right now, and as I said, I have quite a few Mylar bags already full of them. So probably my next harvest of cucumbers, I will freeze dry again using less salt. But for today, we'll move on to other methods. The 6th way that I'm going to use these cucumbers is going to be to dehydrate them. As I said, my freeze dryer is full right now, and I have this, so I'm going to go ahead and fill it up. I think that I have 6 layers, so I'm just going to cut up as many cucumbers as will fit on this and dehydrate them. I personally don't like the peels on cucumbers even when I eat them fresh, so I'm going to go ahead and peel all of my cucumbers before I put them in the dehydrator. You probably wouldn't have to do that if you don't want to, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Because I peeled my cucumbers first, I didn't blanch them, but if you're going to leave the peels on, you might want to consider blanching them, especially if your peels are a little bit thicker or harder. But I filled my dehydrator, and it says right on the top that vegetables should be dehydrated at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the same room that my freeze dryer is in because it can let off quite a bit of heat in the drying process. I'm hoping that running for about 12 hours will be enough. It's about 7 o'clock right now, so I'll just check it again tomorrow morning and I'll see if it's done. The 7th and final way that I'm going to be preserving my cucumbers today is freezing them. I'm just going to peel all of them. Again, my personal preference is that I don't like the peels on my cucumbers, so I'm going to peel all of them and just dice them. And I will flash freeze them on some baking sheets. I'll use multiple layers with parchment paper in between so that they don't stick together. Once they're frozen, I will transfer them into freezer Ziploc bags. The reason I do it that way is just so they don't stick together in the Ziploc bag. Otherwise, you'll just end up with a big clump in the bag. And then I'll plan to just use them throughout the year in my smoothies. I recently had some frozen zucchini in a protein shake. Basically, I made my normal protein shake, but instead of ice, I used frozen zucchini, and I really liked it. So I'm gonna just do that same thing with my cucumbers. This will probably take me a little while, so I think I'm gonna put on some music and get to work. Well, my trays for freezing are pretty much filled, so I'm just gonna have to use these freezer bags and deal with the pieces being stuck together later. Well, I didn't get everything quite finished in one day, but I did get most of the cucumbers processed and I did get the pickles started, but I ended up having to make a grocery run to get everything that I wanted to put in the pickles. If you notice, we got a new table today, so that's really exciting, but I'm just gonna go ahead and fill these jars with the cucumbers to figure out how many jars I'm going to end up with so that I know how much brine I'm going to use. I had just enough cucumbers to fill 7 jars. And I took this jar over to the sink and I filled it with water and dumped it into a measuring cup so that I would know how much brine I would need to add to each jar. And I'm estimating that I'll need about 7 cups of brine. So the recipe that I'll be using is I will use 6 cups of vinegar, and I'm just using pickling and canning vinegar. It's just distilled white vinegar with 5% acidity. So I'm just going to add 6 cups of that to my pot. Next, I'm going to add sugar to the vinegar, and you can use up to 1.5 cups of sugar for 3 cups of the vinegar. I don't want to use that much sugar, so I have 6 cups of vinegar in here, and I'm just going to use 1 cup of sugar instead of 3 cups of sugar. So I'm using 1/3 the amount. Then I'm going to add 4 teaspoons of kosher salt. Next I have 1 teaspoon of mustard seed. I have 1 teaspoon of celery seed and 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. And that's all for the brine. I'm just going to take this over to the stove and I'm going to heat it until it comes to a boil and all of the sugar is dissolved. Okay, it's a couple minutes later and I have my brine. It only took a few minutes on the stove to come to a boil and dissolve that sugar. Hopefully it'll be enough to fill all of these jars. I want to leave a little bit of headspace at the top of each jar. But I did fill the jars really full because the cucumbers will shrink because this brine is so hot. And you can add dill in with the pickles before you put the brine in. You could also add peppercorns or garlic or red pepper flakes to your brine. And you can just experiment with it and see what you like. Hoping I'll have enough here. Well, I think that was the exact perfect amount. I am gonna get a spoon and I will try to submerge all of these cucumbers, and then I'm gonna let them cool a little bit on the table before I transfer them in the fridge. I will be storing these in the fridge and not on the shelf. And I have so many more cucumbers coming. And you guys, this was so easy to do, and it only took me a few minutes. It was really easy to just chop up the cucumbers, and I could also make some slicing pickles for hamburgers and things like that. I have a whole bunch more cucumbers already coming, so I'm definitely going to be pickling more of them. That was such a quick way to get rid of a large quantity of cucumbers. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any more favorite ways to use a cucumber, please leave them in the comments. Make sure that you're subscribed, and we'll see you in the next video.